Hi, welcome. My name is Victor, and I will be your host for tonight. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you will have a wonderful and insightful time. This event is brought to you by Deco, and for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Deco is a nonprofit with roots from UC Berkeley and Stanford, and with a mission to decode the future of work for students and alumni. Over the past 5 years, Deco's annual conference have hosted numerous notable speakers, including founder and CEO of Zoom, board member of Tesla and SpaceX, CEO of Y Combinator, and CEO of Google X, among many others. Our virtual conference last October had generated 1.4 million views across 44 countries, and that prompted us to start hosting virtual events with executives and industry experts like today's section. In other news, our next session will be on August 25th from 6 to 7 Pacific time, featuring Tim Chen, the head of the corporate development at Discord, and we'd love to see you all there. You can check our social media channels for more information, and I'm going to attach a link in the chat where you can register for the event. So this is for our next event. And for any of you who would like to get more involved with us, volunteering or discussing potential partnerships, please do email us at join@deco.build. Our network of volunteers and alumni have gone on to renowned companies including A16Z, Sakura, Y Combinator, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, FANG, ByteDance, and NASA, among others. Now, for today's section, we're very excited to welcome Michael Lee. So a quick intro on Michael. Michael is the Vice President of Data at Coinbase, where his focus is scaling value creation by making varied data work together for the crypto industry. Throughout his career, Michael has focused on empowering people with data and technology, working to define and operationalize big data and AI in practical terms for both startups and large corporations. Prior to Coinbase, he held roles at LinkedIn and eBay and Capital One, and the section will be moderated by Shuo Chen, who is the general partner at IOVC and faculty of UC Berkeley. So if you have any questions for our speaker, you can send them in via Zoom chat. We will try to go through as many questions as possible, but due to time constraints, we might not be able to cover them all. So let's just wait for Shuo and Chen to join the call.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to have you all here with us today. We're really excited to have Michael with us because this is one of the most highly requested topics across all of our speaker series. So Michael, thank you for making time to join us. I'm sure.
Well, I'm very honored and excited as well, and I hope I don't disappoint this audience.
Oh, of course. I'm sure you'll have a ton of great advice and fun stories. And I'm sure Victor already mentioned this, but if you're interested throughout the event in terms of opportunities to work with Michael and with Coinbase, you can make sure to click the link that Victor has already shared or scan the QR code to kind of find out more. And if you're on YouTube, I'm sure we'll include that in the YouTube link afterwards as well. So with that plug, Michael, would love to get started with your story. Please do tell us a little bit more about your story of everything from childhood. What were you like as a child? What did you study? How did you become VP of Data at Coinbase? Take us through the story.
How much time do I have? I think I can go probably like 2 or 3 days. Well, is that like 5 minutes version? Maybe like, given the length of the conversation today.
Let's do it.
Maybe like, let me, I don't know like how far back I will go, right? Given the audience today, probably like, let me went back to my college life, right? So I went to college in Shanghai, Fudan University. I think for people who don't know about that college, we say that we're the #3 best university in China. There are obviously a lot of other universities who think they're the 3rd best also. I think the key point is not to argue who's the 3rd best. I think it's one of the, I would say, best colleges in China. I did enjoy my time there a lot. Also, Shanghai is a very big city. There are a lot of opportunities there as well. The subject I was studying in college was environmental sciences and engineering. It can be a very exciting or very boring subject, depending on like where your interests were. For me, it's a great area to study because it's very diversified, right? So we need to learn essentially all kinds of different things, mathematics, computer science, chemistry, physics, biology. you need to essentially learn all these things to make sense of what's happening in our environment. And the one area I got really passionate about is the climate modeling, or in general, like, how the chemistry physics work, in our atmosphere. So that's a part that I decided to do further study. So when I graduated from Fudan University, I came to the US and studied climate modeling, in particular at the University of Illinois at Bernard-Champaign. For people who know about that university, is like 3 hours to the south of Chicago. It has beautiful, a lot of cornfields, if you will, perfect for study, because there's not really much else to do, I would say. But I had a really, really good time there, where UIUC has one of these largest supercomputing centers in the world. And to do my climate modeling work, I need to leverage a lot of the fastest computers in the world to do computation, right? To do simulation, to essentially simulate what's happening in the atmosphere and how that's going to impact the climate for the long term. And that requires just a lot of knowledge around not only like the chemistry, physics. It actually is very much a data problem, right? How do you collect data from all these different things that you need to put into a model and then do the simulation, do the prediction, and see what's going to happen down the road? So that's really, like, I think my graduate college study really helped prepare me later on for my career, because I realized that how powerful that data can be. In the meantime, how hard it is to get data right? Because oftentimes that my research could be stuck just because, we don't have that piece of data, or that data is not readily to be used, or the data is in a completely different format, or it's somewhere in a storage that we don't have access to. So I realized that data can be so powerful. People probably haven't realized back then, but in the meantime, data needs a lot of efforts, right? To essentially, we need to make it much easier for people to access data, to use data for all kinds of purposes. So, it's almost like during the time that I was in the graduate college, I made up my mind to empower people with data and technology as my career, essentially, right? That basically goes through my whole career in terms of what I do, even to date, right? As you can see. So then after I graduated from UIUC, I took a job at Capital One, a financial services company. You may ask, like, how did you end up there? I think ultimately that Capital One realized that they need people who know mathematics, stats really well to make sense of the data and build better financial products. And they also want people to learn financial knowledge along the way. But if you don't have one side of them, they want to give you the opportunity to learn. So that's actually really good for me, because that's my first job, right? Which goes back to my earlier sort of answers about importance of first job. That's a really good first job for me, because I can leverage all the knowledge I have on mathematics, programming, but also learn a lot of things around the financial industry, right? Like how we can use data for the financial industry. And I realized actually that in the financial industry, there are a lot of places data being used, but not necessarily data is the top of mind for a lot of people, right? Like when it comes to how do we collect the right amount of data, how do we interpret the data correctly, how do we sort of make all the work around data more efficient? It's just not top of mind necessarily. Maybe things have changed now, but back in the days, that was the case. So then I move on to eBay later on after Capital One, where e-commerce was essentially the hot topic in industry. And it also has a big component for transactions, payments, all that as well. So it's quite related, but it's also very much focused on data and how do we use data to facilitate transactions or user experience when you buy things online. The areas I was focused on at eBay was fraud detection, right? Because back in the days that we didn't actually have as a safe environment for e-commerce. By the way, this relates to what I'm going to talk about for blockchain as well, which is that most of technology, when they were just invented or they was just put into practice or normal day use cases, there's always uncertainty. There's always things around safety or security, right? My eBay days was like that. If you talk about eBay in late 90s or early 2000s, no one would say that it's super safe, right? But through the years that as we build out the e-commerce platform, it definitely becomes safer and safer. Like people don't complain too much about, I guess, safety issues or fraud, right, on e-commerce anymore. At least the big ones, eBay, Amazon, because our efforts went into it to enable it. But that's also where I learned from a technology perspective how much powerful data can be. Because essentially, when it comes to fraud detection, it's all based on data, the machine learning models are built on top of it, right? There's no human interaction per se. It's basically the fraudsters, hackers, and we try to fight with them without even seeing each other, knowing each other forever, basically, right? Yeah, so that's my key learning there at eBay, that from a technical perspective, how data can be powerful. And then I move on to LinkedIn when social network was about to become mainstream or already somewhat mainstream already. And I learned that social network essentially is very fascinating, not just from a user perspective, but also from data perspective in my mind, right? Social network essentially is a big graph, if you think about it. Like all the people on social network are different nodes on this graph, and then the relationships between different people are the edges for the graph. And that graph behind the platform is actually the key for social network. And the way that you use the social network data is very different. It also raise the bar a lot in terms of how do you store that data, how do you process the data, how do you make sense of that data. So I learned a lot of things about data. And ultimately, I realized that social network is, to me, it's a data problem, right? Like you're trying to solve how do you sort of help people better get connected through a almost like a database, right? So, and that what got me thinking when blockchain came to more like, not mainstream, but like more well known, right, by the at least tech community. I started to like look into the blockchain industry. I would say mid to late 2017, when that Bitcoin bull run was happening back in the days. What really got me think is that I didn't really pay too much attention for the part that Bitcoin price went up and then down a lot. It's really the part that to me, blockchain is just a new kind of database. It's just so fascinating to me that when you decentralize the transactions and then potentially the financial system, the data that is formed behind is so much more interesting. In a way that it is anonymous in blockchain, but in another way that you get a lot more information about the financial system than the existing financial system, where data is highly guarded. You actually don't have any visibility or transparency around what's happening in the economy, unless you are one of these big players, right, in the world. So I learned about blockchain so much. I started to spend a lot of time, and then eventually I decided, what, like I said, earlier, that the only way that I can spend enough time to keep up with this industry, to learn more about it, to contribute to it, is to work on a full-time job, so that I can spend all my time on it. And then the opportunity at Coinbase came along at the perfect timing, and I'm like, I'll jump in and I will take all the knowledge, experience I have from LinkedIn, and then help that facilitate the whole blockchain industry to hopefully get better on how we use data, or how we think about data and how data should be used, right? For the future of the blockchain industry. And that's that's why I joined Coinbase. And 2 years, almost 3 years, later, right? Now I'm here. So I'm happy to talk about. I think we'll have some later parts of the conversation. We can focus on my experience at Coinbase.
Absolutely. In fact, thank you for sharing your story, because one consistent and key characteristic across this is that whether it's your move from finance to e-commerce and to social networks to now blockchain, you've very much been a kind of a forerunner for emerging industries. And so moving into spaces that are very rapidly growing at a relatively early point in time. So I'm sure as you see across these different sectors, an industry growing from very early days to eventually maturing, there's a number of things that you have to pick up and learn throughout this process. So do share with us a little bit more what it's like to grow alongside an industry. That's very much in contrast to something like, say, finance, because it's very much already a mature industry.
Okay, first of all, I would say that even for mature industry, it still evolves, right? I think it's just a different pace and different aspects of the industry that you grow with. The part that I really enjoy is when the technology is still in early stage. There's a lot of things that need to be figured out, even from a just technical perspective. And it's at a phase that is almost ready for mainstream adoption, but a lot more use cases need to be figured out, right? I think this is where blockchain was almost like 3 years ago. Now we have actually, I can tell you that the 3 years that I'm with Coinbase, there's an up and down for the market, right? Like most of people probably look at the Bitcoin price and say, oh, the blockchain is doing well, blockchain is not doing well. For me, I'm always focused on that, the innovative projects that are coming out from the industry. And I dig deep into it and see what's the future sort of indication from this, and what I can learn from it, and anything that I can leverage for my work as well. I really enjoy the part that I'm, to your point, right? I'm sort of sitting at the cutting edge of the technology and being part of the contributing force to make it more mainstream. I think that just feel great being part of it. And I think that even today, right, we're in that phase that this industry is growing so quickly. I would just suggest people to focus less about the price, right? Like focus more on what are the new things coming out, right? Why they're interesting, why people sort of spending time on it, and what's good about it. So things like the new things in the blockchain space, where DeFi, NFT, new protocols coming out. Like these are the things that I hope that we have more and more young talent who want to join us, because I think this industry can use a lot of more really talented people to come to join us to help make this industry grow faster.
Mm-hmm. I will definitely ask you about what you see as the most exciting opportunities very soon. But before that, I do want to share with the audience, from your perspective, what being VP of data at Coinbase means, because you're sitting at this convergence of two industries that are both very rapidly growing. Because I'm sure in your earlier career, it wasn't even branded as data science back then. It was more analytics. It was perceived to be very different. So you're really at the convergence of two very rapidly growing industries. So what does being VP of data at Coinbase mean?
Well, first of all, I probably dig out the job description when I was interviewing and see like what's written there. I'm pretty sure that a lot of things change. I would say that for the most part, I have been defining what the data function is at Coinbase, and maybe hopefully that have some indication around like what that role is, for this industry as well. But I would like to start with a concept about a crypto company, right? So this is what our CEO Brian Armstrong has been talking about, because there's this question around, is Coinbase a financial company or technology company? This is like a question that came up all the time, and Brian actually wrote a blog about it, and then the answer is Coinbase is both, right? And ultimately, we're a crypto company. And a crypto company means that you need to do both sides really well. But what it means to me from a data perspective is essentially think about a crypto company, right? We have the super critical finance related data, right? There's a financial transaction happening on blockchain. And also, we are the on-ramp from fiat to crypto as well. So we have essentially super critical, sensitive financial data, right? That we need to handle really well. And then we also have the sort of like a technology company, like all the product data we have, just like LinkedIn, just like Facebook. We collect a lot of the product data as well. Then, that's a domain that I'm really familiar with. That's what I've been working on essentially at LinkedIn for many, many years. But really what's more interesting is the third type, right? No other company probably have spent a lot of time on is the blockchain data. Just the blockchain data itself. Remember, I mentioned, to me, blockchain is a new kind of database, right? And then we're getting a lot of new kind of data, right, from this new database. And guess what? There's so many chains out there, right? It's not just Bitcoin, right? There's Ethereum, there's all these new chains coming out as well. We're at the stage, I can tell you that we are very, very early in terms of how do we deal with blockchain data. I think people probably don't think about blockchain as a data-focused project or data-focused field yet. But my prediction, I can tell you, is in the next, I don't know, few years, right? People will realize how powerful that blockchain data is. A lot of folks probably already, and a lot of startups started to work on it already as well. So I think part of it is on me to figure out that in the blockchain industry, how data would be leveraged, right? So, and that's honestly is a really fun part of my job. You know, I spend a lot of time on it. I will give a presentation at the KDD. If you guys know about that data science machine learning conference, that will be held later this week and earlier next week about blockchain data. Sort of like the first presentation that I'm aware of in the industry to get a little bit more in depth around what is blockchain data, how does it look like, what are the use cases. So if people are interested, feel free, you know, if you could join that presentation, I can go a lot more in depth from a technical perspective. I will also make the presentation if the conference allows, like proceeding to on my LinkedIn profile as well, just like a way to introduce people to this field, and hopefully that we can get a lot more people interested in it as well.
Would love that. In fact, I'm sure the team will follow up to make sure that everyone who's in attendance here will get an email with follow-up additional links and whatnot, if it's okay with you, Michael, to share.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure people are excited to see. In fact, as promised, I want to go back to the earlier question of within data at Coinbase, what are the most exciting projects that you get to work on? A little bit like a sneak preview of what you're talking about this weekend. And then also beyond data, in terms of the work that you see within the blockchain industry, what are the most exciting things that you see?
Yeah, well, first of all, like, you know, I will be very clear that not everything that I work on is super exciting, right? I would be the first to admit that there will be a lot of things that are not super exciting, and not just because of this you know, particular, you know, team, like, you know, data team at Coinbase. I think every data team in almost every company in the world that I know, right, like probably spend a good amount of their work, if not majority of work, working on the so-called boring things. Because, you know, I remember a really famous cartoon. I don't know if it's famous or not, but to me, it's resonated really well, which is there's like two steps of the cartoon, right? The first one, like, is picture someone's yelling at the audience, like, who wants clean data? Everybody raise their hands, right? And then the second picture is the person asks, like, who wants to clean the data? And nobody sort of raise their hands. Everybody's like moving away, right? Like you can see a fly like flying around. So there's actually a lot of hard work, right, to get the foundation of the data right, which is actually what we have been focused on, honestly, because I believe that someone has to do the hard work, right, in this space, and then build the right foundation for blockchain data, so that we can enable more applications, more use cases, and better user experience on top of it. So that's really something that we're working on. I'm super excited about it from a vision, a concept perspective. But I can tell you that actual work every day is not necessarily super exciting all the time. And oftentimes we may run into challenges that are very hard to solve, I can tell you guys. But I think I'm happy to be the leader in this space to help paint the vision so that people know this is important. But let's get the work done as well to make sure that we lay out a great foundation so that, you know, we can move faster in the future. So I don't know if that answers your question for me. So the exciting part of my job is we got to work on things that will be super helpful for this industry that I know that is for the future of the industry. But, you know, when it comes to day-to-day, there's a lot of part that is not that, you know, interesting, I would say, to a lot of people. But I tell people, say, hey, you know, that's why, right? Like your job is super valuable. So beyond data, as you mentioned, I think in this industry, like I mentioned, there's so many new things coming out. I honestly think that even that I spend 100% of my professional time in this industry, I don't know if I'm catching up with every innovation, right, that is happening as we speak. My general suggestion is like do some reading yourself, like really go deeper in certain area yourself, because there's just a lot of hype, or there's a lot of comments in this space where I can clearly see that people don't actually understand industry at all, right? If you want to potentially explore some opportunity in this space, at least, you know, the first thing, probably read the Bitcoin white paper by Satoshi that was published in 2008. How many people have read that at least, right? It's just a few pages. It describes a really elegant algorithm for Bitcoin and how it works. I can tell you that I still read it every so often, and every time I read it, I just learn so many new things out of it. And then, you know, look at some of the newer things happening as well. Like I mentioned, DeFi, NFT, a lot of this, you know, newer chains, or the, you know, infrastructure side of L2 optimization. It's too many to follow, I would say. So find the area that you can dig deeper into and then understand well. That will bring you a lot of new perspective to look at this industry. Right? Don't listen to, you know, I guess the comments and news from people who don't know about it. But I can tell you that even today, right? Even that probably, like, you ask anyone on the street, probably Bitcoin blockchain already known for majority of people by now. The people who really know some knowledge behind it, right? Like how it works, you know, the basic concept around blocks, addresses, you know, wallets, transactions are very limited, I can tell you. So if you want to be part of it, at least, right, you know, embrace some of the basic knowledge around it. And I can tell you that as you started to get started on it, you'll find that this space is so much more interesting, and you'll know, like, you know, where you want to probably go deeper.
I really appreciate your practical perspective, because even if you're working at the most exciting industries, there's always going to be the basic foundational work that has to be built in order for strong products and services to be built. So really appreciate that perspective. We've had a ton of great comments and questions. I'll take some of those as well. But really briefly before then, can you give us some specific examples of some of the things within data at Coinbase that maybe you work on, that you can talk about, that you find to be exciting?
Yeah, I mean, like, I actually try to give a presentation about the things that we work on, and, you know, publish blogs around the projects that you know, we deliver, that, you know, make a big impact. So maybe before I give you an example, for people again who are interested in digging a little deeper, I actually publish all the presentations or blogs I you know, published in the past on my LinkedIn profile. So feel free to visit. It's out there. You know, you can go very deep, right? And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have an open link there. Everybody can send me a message around a certain topic, right, that I covered in the past. I gave a in-depth presentation about machine learning at Coinbase last year at KBD around this time. We published probably 2 or 3 blogs so far, you know, about machine learning and the data 3.0 strategy that I set up at Coinbase when I joined Coinbase 3 years ago, and how the different data systems we have in place. The one that I will give at the KDD this weekend will be around the blockchain data specifically, right? Like, what are the work that we are doing there, and some of the sort of the early use cases as well. So yeah, that's just like a general thing, right? Just feel free to visit my LinkedIn profile to get the things that we published like recently, you know, for what we do. The example that I can give is from a, you know, again, like the blog, right? I can use one of the blogs as an example. We published that how we use machine learning to essentially detect fraud in the blockchain space. This is interesting because, like I mentioned, any new technology, when it's new, right, it's being developed, it's being adopted, there's always some concerns, or actually, you know, not just concerns, it's actually the, you know, fraud side of things, because fraudsters tend to leverage the newest technology for their benefits to get the best ROI, right, for the time that they spend. And at Coinbase, essentially, the first thing that we leverage machine learning is on the fraud detection and fraud management side as well. This actually I leverage quite a bit from my experience at eBay, right? Where, like I said, a lot of concepts actually are quite similar in terms of how we detect some of the fraudulent behavior and then stop the fraudster being able to take advantage of the customer and our platform. So yeah, like I don't know like how much detail I go into, but I can tell you on a high level that with machine learning in place, we make the financial transaction systems to buy, sell crypto as safe, if not safer, than some of the traditional financial platforms. So, because I know this space pretty well, I know some industry benchmark, and the fraud rate that we have at Coinbase is lower than industry standard. So, that's one example I can tell you, right? There's many other aspects, but I really want to focus on the piece that we want to enable better user experience and make it a safer environment for people to come in and then to enjoy the best technology possible.
Perfect. We'll make sure that the team sends all these follow-up links as well for folks who want to read more about presentations that Michael have done. And if there's any other resources Michael would recommend to you. I'll take some brief questions. I won't be able to ask the full questions you guys have asked, but we'll be sure to have you have this conversation in the off-the-record roundtable discussion as well. So there's some really good questions about where you see major opportunities to improve AI-specific data quality and how crypto and blockchain can accelerate this focus on improved data quality?
Well, first of all, data quality is a huge topic. I actually think that data quality is a overloaded term. So you can almost blame everything on data quality when data is not right? But there are so many things that can cause data quality in the meantime. Honestly, sometimes data team is almost held hostage because of that, right? If people say that you are in charge of data quality, I always tell people that I can be in charge of data quality, but I need everyone's help, right, to ultimately create a greater data quality. And I don't know if the question is especially around the blockchain data or how blockchain data help existing industry. So let me speak for maybe the former, which is blockchain data, right? And the data quality around blockchain data. Blockchain as a new kind of database, as I mentioned, the best part I like about it is you can have a copy of the database if you want. You can download, the database to your own computer, right? It's reasonably easy if you want to have a copy of the database. This is a very, very different from most of the technologies today, right? Like, for example, if you ask a company, say, hey, can I get a copy of the database? Very, very likely that they'll say no, right? Or if not 100% of them. But for blockchain, essentially, you have that copy of the database yourself already, right? So really the hard part is how do you get the data you need from that database? And this is a much harder question or problem than most people think, right? And then data quality is easy to solve because everyone can have a copy of the database. Then if your data is wrong, there could be like, a lot of other people can correct you, right? Technically speaking, if in a perfect world that would happen. But the reality today, I can tell you is the source that you can get blockchain data is very limited. And it's almost, even for those sources you can get data today, they're not always accurate. And that's just the funny part of a blockchain, right? Which is why that, I think building that foundation right, something that we're working on right now, is super critical. Because data, to your point, if it's not accurate, it's not useful. And sometimes it can be harmful. But sometimes I tell my team that wrong data is worse than no data. I would prefer sometimes that we don't have any data, rather that the wrong data may guide you for wrong decisions. Right? So I think, to answer the question, especially for data quality in blockchain data space, I think we are very early stage that we don't even have a good data foundation to talk about data quality at this point. And that's something that I'm really hoping that we're definitely spending time working on it, but I'm hoping that more and more people will join this space to really helpers, right, create this foundational layer that will benefit everyone. And I believe that that will become a part of the blockchain network in the future, because data is that critical. Like I said, my prediction is data will become much more important for blockchain down the road in the next several years, if not becomes the core of blockchain.
That actually directly relates to one of the other questions, which kind of asks to dig a little bit more on your vision. So what is your vision of crypto and blockchain, and how does data or the role of data fit into that vision? Because now you have almost every company, whether traditional or blockchain crypto, exploring some form of AI in their ops. Do you see that happening in blockchain, and what does that look like going forward?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I get the question right. It's a question around how AI is going to be used for blockchain.
So there's two parts of that question: your vision of blockchain and crypto overall, and where data fits into that. And then also, what role does AI play in all of this?
Got it. I think for the first question, I would like to use analogy for internet, right? If you were to think about internet today, everyone in the world can use it. Right, like even that your grandpa, grandma, like, you know, as long as they have a cell phone, they can install apps by themselves. They're using internet without knowing anything about internet almost, right? Other than that, they know that they're using internet. My prediction is in the next probably 10 to 20 years, that's what blockchain will be. You don't need to know what blockchain is at all at that point. You just know that, oh, I'm using blockchain. I'm using blockchain to do something. A similar analogy could be for electricity. I think very few people know how to generate electricity themselves, right? If you're put on an island, say, hey, can you create a generator that can generate electricity? Very few people can do that, I believe, right? However, you're using electricity every day, like anywhere, right? It's technology will become easier and easier to use going forward. And this is because we build applications that make it easier for people to use, right? I think that's why I mentioned cell phone, I mentioned application on cell phone, that essentially make it effortless to use internet. I believe that those applications will happen in blockchain as well as we speak. And when that happens, what becomes the most critical thing? Data, just like data for internet today. What differentiates all the big tech companies with their competitors eventually is the data they have today, if you look at it. Right? Like every single company, I don't want to name names, but every company, they have their business model. They have a profitable business because of the data they have. Now, I think for blockchain, it will play out differently because blockchain itself is decentralized. It's meant to give more equal access, right, to people from a financial perspective, or in the future, that maybe applications go beyond just the financial space. I think data will play a really critical role, but it's not the same way as the data in the in the internet today, right? I think that we'll see a more equal access to data in the future, which means that people will be facilitated better by data, but also there will be a fair distribution of data, and then potentially business profit coming out of data for different parties as well in a much more fair way. That's my hope. And then that's sort of like the guiding principle that I'm thinking about the data foundation we're building as well.
Perfect. It really sounds like your vision is that eventually blockchain and crypto will be ubiquitous and people will be able to access these products and services without having to understand everything from the ground up. And obviously data plays a really critical role. And that leads into one of the other questions that we got, which is, as you're thinking about this particular vision and thinking about some of the trends and insights that you notice, are there anything that's counterintuitive or surprising to you?
That's a very good question. And well, first of all, a lot of things are happening. I don't know if I should say that they're counterintuitive, etc. It's just like beyond my imagination, I would say, right? Like I just never thought like anything like this could happen. But I think NFT is one of that example that when it happens, I just cannot get my head around it. Like, I just don't know why that's interesting to, people, and, what's the value that it creates. But I as I learn more about it, I realized, yes, absolutely, it creates new value. It has makes a lot of sense, for an NFT to be created, actually to get more and more popular. I think probably the real answer for this is this is why this industry is really exciting, right? Like there are things that are being created. There's innovations that you never imagine yourself. And I think it's important to have an open mindset, right? To try new things, right? To learn more about it, to see why, it was created in the first place. You will understand that a lot of the new demands or like unfilled demands, from the society or from the community. So, that's my attitude. Like, I wouldn't say it's counterintuitive. It's literally like, how can I be more, like visionary, imaginary, right? Like to embrace this new concept, honestly. The only part that I always keep an eye on is what's the potential downside of this, right? Because any new technology, when it's created, there's always the side that if you go too far, right? There may be danger risk associated with it. That's a part that I would sometimes pay pretty close attention, just because that I know that if technology is not used correctly, it may create more damage than benefits for people. So how do we strike that balance is very important. But I wouldn't say that's counterintuitive. It's more like we sort of take my experience in the past to see different technology, how they develop over time, and then trying to avoid the pitfalls that it may go through.
Mm-hmm. I think NFTs is such a great example. Even as faculty at Berkeley and faculty sponsor for the blockchain at Berkeley courses, I've seen some really fascinating use cases. Just a few months ago, Berkeley auctioned off our very first NFTs based on Nobel Prize winning inventions to fund additional research. So there's all sorts of these new interesting use cases emerging. And I think that very much speaks to your point about the power of technology. Oftentimes it's used in creative and unexpected ways to power new things. Exactly. And that's really exciting. I definitely want to ask you more questions for folks who are both younger as well as older. So let me start with kind of the younger spectrum first. So given your extensive experiences in the industry, which is relatively long, given the age of the industry itself, for a lot of our audience members who are young crypto enthusiasts who want to get involved, what are some of the skills that you think are essential for working in blockchain crypto? And what are the things that they can do to better set themselves up for success?
Yeah, like, first of all, I would say that blockchain itself is decentralized, right? That's probably the best part of it in terms of participation, because if you want to be part of it, the community is out there, right? Like, it's very much Reddit, Twitter, like, you learn like, all the new things, right, about this industry. And I think, if you're truly interested in it, just go to this application, Reddit website, Twitter, like follow a few influencers in the industry that started to learn more about it. And also from a opportunity perspective, right? Like a lot of the crypto teams, they are formed through this forum by themselves, right? Like, if you know people who are like-minded, who want to create a project, you can contact each other, remotely, right? Like right now we are all working remotely anyways. So you will learn like, what's new in the industry and what kind of skills, right, that you need to have to contribute to the project. So, that's like probably general comments around like how do you get the latest and how do you participate, right? It's very, very easy. I would say that the entry barrier is much, much lower than all the technology we have seen in the past. That's the general suggestion. For Coinbase specifically, we have the QR code you can scan and you can see all the job descriptions that we have there. Like it has all the skills required and the type of people that we look for as well. I would say that a lot of roles we have in the company are not that different from other technology companies, right? In fact, that we recruit most of talent from technology companies, right? Our technology peers. What we want really is people who have a mindset to embrace the industry, who are passionate about making this industry more and more mainstream and create more and more utilization of this technology. And if you have some existing skills, right, that you bring from your current job, especially from technology companies, it could be very well a good fit. You know, me myself being one example, right? I didn't know too much about blockchain, although I tried really hard. This industry is growing too quickly. But then I have my skills that I learned from the technology companies in the past, and I can bring those knowledge and combine with my passion, with my desire, right, to be part of the blockchain industry together. So these are the best, I think, outcome on both sides, right? So you get to learn what you really want to become part of, and the company can, you know, use a lot of the skill sets that you already have, right? Because ultimately, the technology evolution takes steps, right? We don't get to the final stage, you know, directly. But there's no technology that gets to the final stage immediately, but it will take steps, right? So along the way, you'll learn new things, and step by step, right, you'll become I would say you know, the backbone for the industry, right? Like we're still so much early in the industry. We need so much more talent. We're hiring so many people. So yeah, you know, come join us if you're determined. I think that you'll find a way.
Yeah, it really sounds like there's no kind of, this is like, check the boxes, do this, and it will work for you. But really, it's the aptitude to learn and to grow very quickly and be able to leverage existing skill sets. And hopefully it ultimately comes back to the fundamentals of, can you get the basic stuff done?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's no, it's not a binary per se, right? It is a new technology, but it still leverages a lot of existing technologies to evolve itself. So don't think about it as the sort of Terminator like of technology, right? Like, you know, we actually need people, right, from existing technology spaces to join us and learn new things with us. And we want to do things in a new way, right? Doesn't mean that it doesn't require any skills in, you know, existing skills. So yeah, like again, the last thing I will repeat again is try to study more about space. That as you get more understanding, this thing will become more tangible for you. Right? If it's very abstract for you at this point, you probably want to, you know, study a little bit more. That's my suggestion.
Perfect. And for folks who are on the other spectrum, who are much more senior and experienced in their respective jobs, curious what you see as some of the unexplored or under talked about opportunities that you find to be exciting.
Sorry, maybe let me unpack this question a little bit. When you say unexplored opportunities for senior folks, what does it mean? Like, you know, is that some of the roles that have been filled for this industry, or senior folks, like, you know, it's harder for them to learn new things? Like, you know, sorry, I just want to get more context there.
Yeah, of course. So the question is really coming from the perspective of someone who's more experienced at a traditional company, who maybe has been able to think about data analytics in more of a traditional sense. But if they want to think about value creation, or them being able to generate value for a potential new role in blockchain, or think about how to better leverage blockchain as a technology within their existing roles, what are some of the things that they can do?
Oh, for their existing roles, not necessarily like, you know, becoming part of blockchain.
It could be both. It could be, how do they evolve their existing roles so that it has more blockchain, or it could be, how do they evolve their roles to maybe join a different company?
Got it. Sorry if my answer is not super specific, but I don't really see seniority being a barrier for, you know, exploring opportunities in blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. Nor do I think is really super helpful sometimes, you know, if that makes sense, right? Like, I think that the open mindset is very, very important, because you're learning something completely new, right? And it has a lot of different aspects compared to maybe the things that you're familiar with. If you judge these things based on all the things that you're aware that you learned in the past, you may see it as, you probably see more negative things than positive things sometimes, right? I have talked with actually quite a few very senior folks, especially people who have deep knowledge or like very long experience with the more traditional financial industry. They tend to be more suspicious around cryptos and blockchain, right? I think part of that is because they're more used to the existing system. It's hard to think outside the box, right? And then like what new that could come. And sometimes that you may get a little bit defensive right? Because you are experts, right? You have a lot of experience in this space. So again, my suggestion is that just hopefully that we can be all open-minded and then say, hey, this is a new thing, right? Let's learn about it. Like, by the way, I use this picture as my background today, somewhat with that sort of metaphor, if you will, right? Because Coinbase is working on open financial system, right? Like, in many ways that we want to evolve, we want to make the financial system better. But now you see that Coinbase is highlighted at the Wall Street, in NASDAQ, and as a public company, right? So in many ways that we are complying with the existing traditional financial rules, right? So that we can be a public company. So I think that this is actually the best part. I think the US is still the best place for entrepreneurs, for innovations to happen, is this open mindset, right? You look at it, Wall Street is welcoming a crypto company. And why don't we open up our mind and then, learn new things around it as well, right? So my suggestion here is don't make seniority a barrier for you to embrace new technology. And hopefully that make the experience that you gain to be a facilitator for you to learn new technology instead of a blocker, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I will also ask the question slightly differently, which is, are there any kind of new or unique job positions in Coinbase or other crypto companies that you don't see in the traditional industry? And I saw one of the questions that came in too was about, is there anything different about the way that, for example, the data team at Coinbase is structured and staffed? So I guess I asked a broader question. So new, unique positions.
Yeah, I mean, any position that is specific to blockchain will be new in a way, right? Like, for example, we have large teams working around blockchain data foundation on my team. That would be new for sure, right? Like, if you never worked with blockchain data or used blockchain data before, that would be new. But it doesn't mean that we only hire people who know about blockchain already. Otherwise, we will not be able to hire people, right? So it's almost like in many sense that a lot of openings are new, right? Because you're working with a completely new technology, in a completely new industry. But it doesn't mean the people that we need are, already have that knowledge, right? We, like I mentioned, that we are very open to hire talent that has the right mindset, has a passion, right, with industry. Obviously, there's good amount of some existing knowledge, that will be a really big plus. But we do need people who have certain skill sets to help the company in many different ways. So I don't know if that answered the question directly, but just take a look at our job postings, right, on our career site, right? You will see like all the positions that we need. Some of them are very crypto forward, in the sense that you probably don't even know like what this role is doing. That's probably like the unique role that you're talking about. But in a lot of other roles, you will see that, oh, actually, this is my function. If you look at the data team, we build data foundations, build data platform, we do data science, machine learning, we create data products. That's not that different from another, data team in another data technology company, I would say. So yeah, I think it depends. That's my answer. But I would say that yeah, like I said, that don't see blockchain as a a terminator like a technology, right? It's evolve. It's based on the evolution of existing technology as well in the end.
Perfect. I know there's a ton of other questions that came in that we don't have time to fully answer, but hopefully for those of you who are really keen on asking, you can ask that in the roundtable discussion section. I know there were questions about decentralized exchanges and what your thoughts on them, et cetera. So I'll save that for the roundtable discussion.
Sure.
The last question maybe to conclude our main stage time together on is, as people go forward in their roles, whether or not they're working in blockchain full time or they are continuing a different role, are there effective strategies that you would recommend, whether it's blogs to follow, certain newsletters or books to read, that you think would be effective next steps for everyone here today to continue to learn about what's going on in the intersection of data and blockchain?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the forums that you can follow the latest news for blockchain, there's many venues today already. I do think that Reddit and Twitter tend to be two places where you can find a lot of latest. There's also just like huge amount of information. So over time, you need to sort of see like how you can filter out the part that is most useful for you. I would say that visit Coinbase.com as often as you can also, because we try to bring the newest product, right, to our user base as fast as we can as well. There are certain news channels that are pretty good as well. The one that I read quite often is The Block. So I found that the news there are quite timely to cover this industry. And now Coinbase has a newsletter around the block as well. Like, if you're part of our registered member, I think you can get that email every so often as well. So yeah, so that's probably like the main suggestion I have. Obviously, like if you're interested in data, particularly for blockchain, following our blog, right, Coinbase blog, I try to publish all these things on my LinkedIn as well, like timely updates. So yeah, so these are different ways, right? Like, for the industry perspective, but also, data specially, like, maybe following me on LinkedIn would be a good way to get updated as well.
Yeah, I was going to recommend folks can certainly follow you. And if they have any additional questions, well, first of all, being here is already a great start. So if there's additional questions they have, we can certainly help organize and make sure to connect the right people to you as well. With that, Michael, thank you so much for your time with us on Main Stage again. And we would love to welcome, of course, and we would love to welcome everyone who applied to be in the roundtable to join us for our off the record roundtable discussion as well. And with that, Victor, I will pass it back to you to close out the event.
Thank you, Shuo. Oh, thank you, Shuo. So, all right, this concludes tonight's section. And thank you so much to Michael and Shuo for your time and for such an engaging discussion. And thank you for coming. We hope you enjoyed the section and then gain numerous insights from it. We'll be publishing the recording for today's section on YouTube. So please subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, which I'm gonna paste it on the chat. So for those of you who are interested in joining Coinbase, I'm gonna share the screen again. So just scan the QR code if you're interested. And we hope to see you again in 2 weeks at our next speaker event, which will be held on August 25th from 6 to 7 Pacific time, featuring Shuo Chen, the head of corporate development at Discord.